Hey everyone, this is Mayan Writes. I'm Mayan. I talk all about writing and storytelling. Today we're talking about dynamic conflicts and Breaking Bad. That's it, people. We're going into the big one. Breaking Bad is probably the best show ever made, or at least top 5, right? At least in terms of storytelling. It's a masterclass in writing. No matter what genre you're writing, it's going to elevate your skills for sure, so I recommend watching it. There are a million lessons I've learned from breaking down the episodes. Lessons on pacing and character design and dialogue and writing tension. I'll probably make a few episodes on Breaking Bad, but in this episode, I'll focus on dynamic conflicts. Now, I made a conflict writing guide that is available on my website where I talk about how great conflicts are dynamic, organic, and complex. And boy, does no one do it better than Walter White. Okay, so why dynamic conflicts are so important? The conflict is the fuel of your story. It can't stay the same throughout the story. When it evolves, the drama intensifies. Think about it. In great stories, the conflict keeps intensifying and increasing, never staying in the same dramatic place it started in. A conflict that doesn't change, for example, if you have the same fight with the same villain all the time, is super static, and that's where the story dies. Okay, back to Breaking Bad. There will be, of course, spoilers for the first and second season. You've been warned, although if you haven't seen it, I suggest don't listen to this episode and spoil it for yourselves. Just go watch it and come back. So a short synopsis. Walter White is a chemistry genius who was once involved in a Nobel Prize winning research and is now a chemistry high school teacher in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He has a teenage boy and a baby on the way. He works 2 jobs to support his family, and overall his life is kind of embarrassing. On his 50th birthday, he finds out he has inoperable lung cancer and that he's dying. He then decides to use his knowledge to cook crystal meth in order to make money for his family after he's gone. Okay, we're up to speed. Cool. Oh, a fun fact. Vince Gilligan, the showrunner and creator of the show, wasn't working at the time before he made Breaking Bad. It wasn't working for a while, and he was talking to a colleague who was also not working for a while, and that colleague suggested they take a minivan to the desert and start cooking meth. So this was inspired by that idea, like what would make a regular person do that. Okay, up to speed, moving on. So the conflicts Walter White faces work on different platforms, kind of different faucets, but they all stem from that one decision to start cooking meth. It's powerful because it shows how fast things can come tumbling down due to one move. So he sets this chain reaction that causes a few things to happen in the first season. A, he gets in trouble with the local drug dealers, right? This is a conflict based on turf that Walter will discover is a huge thing, in a huge problem in his plan to sell drugs in Albuquerque. The next is his family conflict, because Skylar, his wife, will slowly start to realize what he's doing, and he'll need to keep doing these crazy things to keep the secret from her. And lastly, the DA is getting on his trail as well. Since he's not an experienced felon, at least in the first season, he's not well trained in covering his trail. And now there is a fourth source of conflict, which is the internal conflict. And that is basically the entire story, the entire premise of the story. That means losing his own moral compass and slowly turning from Walter White into Heisenberg. So these are the four main faucets. Now, not only each one of them escalates immensely every episode on its own, but these faucets will feed off each other and kind of interchange. So there isn't a moment without tension throughout the season. Okay, let's see some examples. So just cooking the first batch forces Walt to solve a lot of problems. He needs to steal supplies for the high school. He lies to his wife. He empties their bank account to get the RV. Then they go to the desert and they cook and they have to find someone to sell it to. And this is actually where things really start getting problematic because they have to find the local drug dealers to sell to, who are Crazy 8 and his cousin Emilio. But those drug dealers, because they're turf war that Walt was not super aware of, they go after them. And there's a showdown where Walt and Jesse are left with one dead body and one prisoner. Having a prisoner in the basement forces Walt to make a tough decision. He either needs to kill him or let him go and risk him coming after them for revenge. This is where the internal conflict torments him. He makes a pro-con list. He tries to stall and avoid the problem. He tries to negotiate. Then he lashes out at his wife, Skylar. Needless to say, this makes her even more suspicious of him. So the main conflict, the conflict with the drug dealers, escalates and also triggers the internal conflict that in turn triggers the family conflict. Not to mention that Hank, Walt's brother-in-law, and the DEA finds their equipment in the desert and starts snooping as well. So Walt decides to kill Crazy 8, and then he creates a new conflict because now they don't have anyone to sell to again. There's no distribution. They're back to square one, where they will make an even worse decision that will start off an even worse chain reaction because they will go into business with an even crazier drug dealer, Tuco. In the end of season 1, Walt and Jesse witness Tuco kill another man. Walt is again tormented by what he took on, and he takes it out on Skylar again, who realizes more and more that she doesn't recognize him. Tuco kidnaps Walt and Jesse to keep their mouths shut, which, by the way, I thought was a tad unbelievable, but okay. And Hank shows up and kills Tuco. This resolves the Tuco issue, but creates two new problems on two different faucets, because Hank finds the blue meth and gets closer to Heisenberg, and Jesse and Walt are left once again without distribution. They decide to distribute the drugs themselves, and this creates a whole other list of problems, like avoiding undercover DEA cops, junkies stealing their drugs, street cred, which is apparently a thing if you want to, keep your business afloat, and of course the never-ending turf wars that even bring to the murder of one of Jesse's friends and dealers. On another level, a new problem arises. They need to launder their money. Walt is making so much money he can't stash it all in the house anymore. Enters lawyer Saul Goodman, probably one of the best characters ever written, and he solves many problems but creates even more. Second season, another big player comes in, who is Gus, who is the more experienced Walt, right? Calculated, careful, but very dangerous. And he sets the stage for a whole new kind of conflicts. Okay, let's take a break. So you can see none of these issues are unreasonable. They all come from that one step that Walt took to go into the drug business in Albuquerque. Everything else was just a natural course of events. The reality of the drug world, its constraints on a quote-unquote normal person, getting into it for the first time, experiencing the violence and the hardcore reality. Also, note that the conflict never rests. It changes all the time. On a personal level with Skylar, because she tracks Walt's strange behavior, she keeps doubting him until she learns the truth, and then she leaves him. With the DEA, with Hank is after Heisenberg, he doesn't know that it's actually Walt, but he's slowly starting to get on his trail. And the internal conflict. In the middle of season 2, he gets the news that his cancer is in remission, and he's devastated because all the death, all the corruption, everything was for nothing. But then, by the end of season 2, he completes this negative character arc and actually becomes the baddie we all knew he could be. When he lets, Jesse's girlfriend die, which causes a chain reaction that brings down an airplane from the skies and the death of a lot of people. He still wants to be a good father and a good husband. He's still convinced that he's doing it all for his family, but he likes the power of this new position. And by the end of season 2, he's already warning other dealers to stay away from his turf. So this sounds like a lot, and it's true. Every episode is very, very full. But why does it work? Like we said, all the conflicts make sense. They all part of that world building of Albuquerque and the drug scene. They all stem from that same source, Walt deciding to go into the drug business. This is what I love. Again, none of it is arbitrary. It's just like, it's a law of physics. For every action, there's a reaction. I think that's very, very smart writing. B, they make for great pacing, the conflicts. When one plot line is at a low point in terms of tension, the other one is creating problems. And what Walt has to deal with keeps changing constantly. He fixes one problem, he creates two more. And naturally, too, like we said. This makes for a story that you can't stop watching. And his problems increase in intensity, too, which is a hard thing to do considering a lot that goes on in just one pilot. Finding out he's dying from cancer, cooking, being held at gunpoint, attacking the other drug dealers, almost being caught by the police, and ending up with a dead body and a prisoner he needs to kill, all in one episode. This is just smart plotting, right? Vince Gilligan doesn't just throw all the problems at Walt at once. He layers them on top of each other in a very strategic way. By the time Walt puts out one fire, another one we didn't even see is already ablaze. For example, in the end of season 2, Walt has seemingly won, right? He won over Jane, Jesse's girlfriend, who tried to blackmail him, he won over Tuco. He has a lawyer to sort out the money thing. Everything seems to be under control. What he doesn't know is that the Mexican cartel is sending two of Tuco's cousins to avenge his death. And this is a problem he'll only have to face in season 3. I think the smart thing is that it never really feels too much. There's a lot going on, but the pacing is so perfect that you're never overwhelmed. You just left wanting more. Okay, let's talk about the character arc for a little bit, because that has a lot to do with the dynamic conflicts. So it was said about Breaking Bad that the premise was basically taking Mr. Chips and turning him into Scarface. Allowing a character to change on TV didn't happen a lot before Breaking Bad. TV was actually built on static characters so that the story can remain the same throughout many seasons, unlike a movie where there's an ending point. I look at the plotting method in Breaking Bad as a way to serve the arc, which just proves that what I always say, everything is eventually theme, even though the writers themselves said that they don't really think about theme. But for me, that goes to show that when a story is airtight and complete, then natural themes, come out anyway. So I see the dynamic conflicts as a means to an end when the target is to turn Walt into Heisenberg. And if the conflict pacing wasn't that rapid, I don't think it would allow for the same rapid transformation. Now remember that the whole entire show takes place in 2 years, meaning that the entire character arc from Mr. Chips to Scarface took only 2 years, which is no time at all. So I think it makes sense for the entire show that the conflicts need to be intense and fast changing. Another word on dynamic conflicts and pacing. When Breaking Bad came out in 2008, it was part of a turning point in TV shows that stopped giving us the slow burn plot lines of the early 2000s, when things really happened, big things really only happened in the season finales. And we're a different viewer now. We want things to happen quicker. We don't have the same attention span or patience. If things aren't moving quickly enough, there's a chance a viewer or a reader will quit on you. So that's another reason to make sure your conflicts stay super dynamic. So what do we have here today? To create dynamic conflicts in the most effective, complex, intense way, my advice is to A, make sure they're all organic and they start with a hero's decision and derive from that specific decision into a few different channels, and then keep them on the back burner and let them simmer for a bit before piling them onto each other. Just when one conflict is resolved, the other one from the back burner should be boiling. If you want to read more about dynamic conflicts and my thoughts on them, you can download the writing guide from my website. It's free. It's in myownwrites.com. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed it. In the meantime, happy writing.